The weird thing about gambling apps is they don't really look like gambling anymore. That's the first thing you notice after using one for a while. They look soft, clean, friendly, almost bright colors. Smooth animations, little celebrations every time something happens on the screen. Half the time they look closer to mobile games than anything people would normally associate with casinos. And I think that changes the way people process what they're actually using. Most people still picture gambling addiction in this very old-fashioned way. Somebody alone at a slot machine in the middle of the night. Cigarette smoke, poker chips, somebody visibly falling apart. But gambling companies figured out a long time ago that people become less defensive around things that feel entertaining and familiar. So now the industry barely presents itself like gambling at all. It presents itself like convenience, like sports culture, like something casual you do while waiting for food to arrive or sitting around watching a game with your friends. After a while, it just starts feeling normal. That's probably the weirdest part, and most people using these apps are not sitting there carefully studying statistics or trying to beat probability. That's usually how gambling gets framed online, like everybody secretly thinks they're a genius sports analyst. But honestly, most users already know the odds are against them. That's not really the point. Casinos figured something out a long time ago. People react differently to rewards when they don't happen consistently. If somebody wins every single time, the excitement disappears pretty fast. But if the reward only comes occasionally, the brain keeps waiting for the next one. That waiting becomes part of the addiction. Phones just made the whole thing worse because now the system follows people everywhere. And what keeps people staring at the screen usually is not even winning. It's getting close to winning, losing by 1 point, missing a parlay by a single game. Watching the animation slow down right before it lands somewhere else. That feeling sticks in people's heads longer than normal wins sometimes. You start thinking stupid things for a second, like maybe the next one fixes it. After a while, the apps start feeling detached from normal life. You stop tracking time properly. Small amounts of money stop feeling like actual money. $20 turns into one more try. Then another one, then maybe one larger bet, because losing several small bets in a row creates this irritated feeling that makes people want to recover the loss quickly, and the apps are built around that emotional state. Everything moves fast enough that you never fully sit with the loss before something else appears on the screen. Another boost, another live bet, another notification pretending urgency exists where it doesn't. The apps make sure you never really stop long enough to think about what you're spending. If somebody physically handed over cash every few minutes, they would probably get uncomfortable much faster. But inside an app, the money starts feeling abstract. It feels more like numbers moving around than something connected to real life. Most of this stuff gets tested constantly. How long animations last. What color buttons people respond to most. How quickly users leave after losses. What kind of notifications bring them back. Tiny details most people never consciously notice, because the longer somebody stays emotionally caught up in the app, the more likely they are to keep spending. That's the part making the money. And after a while, the apps stop behaving like casinos and start behaving more like social media platforms. They message people when they stop opening the app. They offer rewards after losing streaks. They send promotions during big sporting events because emotions already run higher during those moments. Even the wording gets carefully shaped. Risk-free bet is one of those phrases that sounds harmless until you stop and think about it for 2 seconds. There's no such thing as a risk-free gamble. The phrase only works because people emotionally react to words before they logically process them. Gambling companies learned the same thing social media companies learned years ago. Softer language lowers resistance. Once you start noticing the mechanics underneath these apps, they stop feeling separate from the rest of modern technology. They start feeling connected to almost everything else people stare at all day. Infinite scrolling, loot boxes, reward streaks, push notifications, daily bonuses, random rewards. The same systems keep showing up because they work, and kids are growing up surrounded by those systems now. Gambling companies usually defend themselves by saying they do not advertise directly to children, and technically, a lot of them don't. But there's still something strange about how gambling now sits everywhere around sports and online entertainment. Betting ads during games, influencers talking about parlays on podcasts, odds displayed during broadcasts like weather updates. Gambling slowly stopped looking like some dangerous adult activity and started looking more like part of being a fan, something casual, something normal. Teenagers absorb that atmosphere even if nobody directly tells them to gamble. And then there's the overlap with gaming culture, which people still argue about constantly, loot boxes especially. Because even if companies insist they are different from gambling mechanically, emotionally they feel almost identical. The suspense, the sounds, the dramatic pause before revealing what somebody got, the bright visual explosions after rewards. You can watch the same emotional patterns repeat themselves across games, casinos, social media apps, even shopping apps sometimes. The systems all blur together after a while. People get used to constantly chasing the feeling of maybe. And gambling apps do not really need users thinking carefully. They just need them emotionally caught up in momentum. People get impulsive once they're emotional. The apps know that. Everything pushes urgency, countdown timers, live odds changing constantly. limited time offers that are not really limited. The apps rarely give users a quiet second to think. And honestly, a lot of people who get stuck in this stuff do not look reckless at first. Usually they just look tired or lonely or stressed out. At first, it usually just looks harmless. Something to do during boring nights or long commutes or while half watching sports. Sometimes it's just a way to disappear into something for a while. Gambling apps are very good at creating that feeling where the outside world fades out for a few minutes and all attention narrows onto possibility. Maybe the next bet fixes the loss. Maybe things turn around. Maybe the night changes direction. Even people who know the odds are bad still get pulled toward that feeling sometimes. People do weird things once hope gets involved, especially when money, stress, boredom, ego, and loneliness all start mixing together inside the same tiny screen. For individuals navigating the challenges of gambling recovery, the foundational step begins with acknowledging the problem and its direct impact, as self-recognition allows for conscious decisions to limit further harm. Immediately removing active access to gambling platforms is essential, which may involve deleting mobile apps, blocking betting websites, or utilizing digital tools that systematically restrict online access. Many individuals benefit from establishing strict financial safeguards, such as limiting online banking privileges, permitting trusted family members to oversee personal accounts, or shifting exclusively to prepaid cards to eliminate the possibility of impulsive digital deposits. Establishing structured daily routines can significantly reduce direct exposure to gambling triggers. Avoiding specific environments or media that normalize betting behavior, including sports broadcasts, heavily integrated with live odds or social media content promoting gambling parlays, helps effectively limit temptation, replacing gambling with alternative activities that provide natural stimulation without financial risk, such as regular exercise, new hobbies, or volunteering, supports sustainable long-term behavioral change. Engaging with professional support is highly recommended for building long-term resilience. Certified counselors specializing specifically in gambling addiction can provide cognitive behavioral therapy to help identify and deconstruct the exact thought patterns that lead to impulsive betting. Peer support groups, such as Gamblers Anonymous, offer vital accountability and shared strategies for coping with intense urges. Quantitative evidence demonstrates that active participation in structured support programs significantly increases the likelihood of achieving long-term abstinence. Setting clear and absolute financial boundaries remains critical throughout the recovery process. Limiting direct access to disposable funds, adhering to strict budgets, and completely avoiding high-risk financial instruments reduces the potential for rapid, catastrophic losses. Tracking past losses over time can also help illustrate behavioral patterns objectively, serving as a stark physical reminder that reinforces the decision to stop. Finally, individuals must directly address the underlying emotional triggers that drive compulsive behavior. Internal states like chronic stress, boredom, loneliness, and anxiety frequently contribute to gambling behavior by turning the app into a mechanism for emotional escape. Developing alternative coping strategies, such as mindfulness, meditation, or seeking professional mental health support, effectively reduces reliance on gambling as a source of temporary relief. Recovery is a gradual process, and setbacks may occasionally occur. Planning, specifically for high-risk periods, maintaining absolute accountability with trusted individuals, and consistently utilizing available recovery resources vastly increases the chances of sustained, long-term recovery.